Welcome back to Gender Studies. In this chapter, we're going to explore a few theoretical approaches to gender. Not everyone sees the value in theories. I know that can be viewed as being a bit, not very practical, not very real life, or too many of these things to make sense of anything. However, theories are derived from research and ultimately are data fact driven and can influence very many areas of our lives. Social policies are based on theories, laws, education, even our personal lives and perspectives. One thing to consider when looking at theories is to imagine the theories kind of like wearing sunglasses with different colored lenses. Each different color pair gives you a slightly different view of the landscape. Like sunglasses, theories are differing views of what's being studied. Not any one theory is more right or correct. However, some theories have more research and studies completed to strengthen their theory. So going forward, remember, these theories are research-based and have been studied for many years. You don't need to accept them all. I just ask that you do your best to try on a pair of sunglasses, look around, then try on another pair and look around. Maybe one will suit you better than others, or maybe you can see the value of several. Theories will help us gain a more rounded understanding of the world around us, and it's based on fact and research rather than belief without any foundation that you can defend that belief with. This is a class by which you can explore the topic of gender, culture, and communication. And let's begin at the theoretical approaches to gender. A theory is a way to describe, explain, and predict relationships among phenomena or events in our everyday life. We use theories to make sense of behaviors of both men and women. Theories about sex and gender affect our thoughts and our behaviors. Theories can help develop awareness about ourselves and the people we interact with daily, yearly, and throughout our lives. Now we're going to explore 4 types of gender theories. We're going to look at the biological theories. They include the research that's done on sex chromosomes, hormones, and brain structures at what makes men men and women women. Interpersonal theories, interpersonal relationships with and the development of the concepts of masculinity and femininity. It involves some psychology. The cultural theories are going to look at the larger influences of culture on gender. And then lastly, we're going to look at the critical theories. Now, critical theories are a little different in that they focus on the oppressed groups and how they can become more empowered. So to begin, the biological theories of gender. Biological theories of gender focus on how sex chromosomes, hormones, and brain specializations can affect individuals. Biological characteristics of sex are based on differences. So let's start with sex chromosomes. Are the X and Y chromosomes, the sex chromosomes are the X and Y chromosomes that determine if a person is male or female. Now most people inherit one sex chromosome from each parent. Different genes, such as those that influence intelligence or social skills, are thought to reside on different chromosomes. Because men and women have different chromosomal makeup, they have different possibilities for gene expression. Most females, XX. Most males, XY. There's an issue with the Y chromosome evolutionary-wise. Men are more prone to heredity conditions than women. Because of the Y, there's only one Y, men only have one Y and one X. If a Y is carrying a conditioned gene, there's no other Y that can correct that bad gene. Men have an X and a Y, whereas women have two X's. And it's having the two X's that where they're more likely to have that if one X has a bad element to it, the second X might override that bad connection. And that preserves women's chromosomal integrity a little better than men's. The Y chromosome is being, it's argued that in research that the Y chromosome is starting to have the end of its day. What that means would be, what does that do for men? Gendered, so what I would just touch base as well, check in your textbook, and you'll look at an element in your textbook on chromosomal variations. It's just a little breakout box. You might find that helpful. Next we'll look at, in the biological, we'll look at hormones, as they play an important role in biological theories. Hormones influence skills and tendencies. For example, girls could favor trucks to play with if mothers had high levels of testosterone during their pregnancy. Hormones influence tendencies associated with gender. Males, when given estrogen, can experience a decline in spatial skills, one of the skills that is connected to testosterone, and increase verbal skills, one of the skill sets associated with women and estrogen. Or men sprayed with oxytocin, now that's the hugging hormone, show empathy and sensitivity, which is associated with that hormone. Now it's important to note that men and women are the same in regards to oxytocin. That is to say that men are capable of being caring for children and having those sort of hugging moments as much as women do. It's just that culturally we don't seem to do that as much. Estrogen is the primary female hormone and has been shown to have a positive influence on things like cardiovascular functioning. It tends to strengthen the immune system and to create a greater deposits of fat around hips and breasts, and to slow liver processing of alcohol. The alternative in terms of men is testosterone, and it's the primary male hormone, and it's been shown to have a hormonal cycle of its own. Women have their hormonal cycle, menopause, but the male hormonal cycle has been linked to violence, aggression, and changes in cognitive functioning. Men's hormonal change later in life is more gradual. Women than women's, and testosterone tends to be more gradual, beginning at around 30 years of age and decreasing gradually over time. Testosterone deficiency can lead to an increase in body fat and moodiness and depression. Now, the third part of the biological ones is looking at the differences in brain structure. Each sex specializes in one side of the brain. Doesn't mean it only uses one side of the brain, but it specializes. So while research has shown that women and men use both sides, the left and the right lobes of the brain, the sexes tend to specialize using different lobes. Men tend to emphasize left brain functioning, responsible for the traditionally linear, sequential information, spatial skills, and abstract analytical reasoning. Women, they tend to emphasize the right brain functioning, responsible for imaginative, artistic activity, holistic, intuitive thinking, and some visual functions. Now there's a structure that joins the two lobes of the brain. It's called the corpus callosum. Now women have a greater ability to use this corpus callosum, and it allows them to cross between lobes more freely. It doesn't mean that men don't have the corpus callosum. They do. It doesn't appear that men use it as dominantly. It may explain why women tend to do better at memory, social skills, and juggling more tasks than men. It's going to be important. I wish, that's David Reimer behind me there. In your text, there's a breakout box about David, and it really emphasizes the forces of biology that are evident in gender reassignment. Now, he didn't gender reassign because he chose. He was gender reassigned at birth, shortly after, because he was underdeveloped. And so what you will read is a bit of his experience in the role of hormones in biology. Now, biological classification into male and female is not as clear-cut as many people think. The term gender binary refers to the division of humans into two sexes that are presumed to be opposite, distinct, and natural. Now, one of the earliest challenges to gender binary came from research on intersex people. Other research has noted that there is more variation within each socially defined sex than between the two. The term genderqueer was developed to signify identities outside the gender binary. Now, the second grouping that we'll look at in terms of theories will be the interpersonal theories of gender. And we're going to start with the psychodynamic theory of gender development, where it emphasizes interpersonal relationships within the family. Now, this first relationship, mom and dad, influences how we define our identity, including gender. Most infants are cared for by women, our mothers. Mothers may act differently towards daughters and sons based on their own upbringing and social views. Infants follow distinct developmental paths that reflect relationships with mother. There is a fundamental likeness between mothers and daughters. They interact more with their daughters. They keep daughters closer physically and psychologically. Nurturing. They're more nurturing because of the identification with their mothers, young girls may first understand their gender identity in relationship to their mother. Sons and mothers recognize a fundamental difference between themselves, which leads to a greater separation. Mothers encourage more and early independence and talk less about emotional matters. Sons thus associate independence and autonomy with relationships. Now, it's important to note that as much as I know you might be hearing this and say, well, my mom didn't do that with me and I don't feel that way, that may be so. But again, I will remind you that this is data-based. This is research-based. So these are feedbacks from observations and data collected from different families where this has demonstrated to be the majority, not all. And that's an important distinction, okay? Identity is not fixed. We grow and challenge as we journey through life. As infants mature, they carry with them a basic identity formed in their first relationship with their mom. Now, next, in the personal one, we're going to look at the psychological theories of gender, starting with social learning. Now, social learning, their claim is that we learn to be masculine or feminine by imitating others and getting responses for our behavior. Reinforcement of gendered roles and behaviors occur when people around children reward some behaviors appropriate for one's gender and react neutrally or negatively to others. So if a boy falls down and skins his knee and gets up and does, brushes it off and moves about his business, we might say, that's a good boy, you're a big boy, you don't have to cry. Well, there's nothing wrong with boys crying. But if we reward that not crying is appropriate masculine behavior for a boy, that boy starts to feel that that's a part of their identity and may struggle with emotional expression later in their life. Children imitate communication. It's communication that we see in media and by others. Media plays a role in teaching children what roles are rewarded for girls and what roles are rewarded for boys. Look at commercials or toy magazines about what things are appropriate for boys and girls. You'll find a very distinct line between this is stuff for boys and this is stuff for girls. You will find examples of boys and girls sharing in other activities. But it's more about how, are they rewarded for sharing those activities, or are they not rewarded as to whether or not they accept that? Social learning theories suggests that reinforcement process continues throughout a lifetime and views children as passive in this process. Now, alternatively, in cognitive development theory, children play an active role in developing gender identity. They do this by picking models of competency for masculine or feminine behavior. Children go through several stages in developing their identity. From birth to 24 to 30 months, it involves noticing how others communicate labels and describe them. It's in that first 30 months, we're identifying and labeling things and developing a vocabulary for children. By age 3, even a bit earlier, children realize that being a boy or being a girl is not temporary. This is known as gender constancy. It's the point in which a child recognizes that his or her gender is relatively unchanging. And it's at this point that children are more motivated to learn to become competent at their gender. They do this by observing same-sex role models and seeing what behaviors, attitudes, and feelings are associated with that gender. Gender constancy can be more challenging for children who do not identify with their assigned sex and its gender expectations. Now, this third one, it's known as gender schema theory. Now, a schema is a psychological term, and it describes a pattern of thoughts or behaviors that organizes categories of information and relationships between them. So a gender schema is an internal mental framework for categorizing the perceptions that we see and directing our behavior related to gender. It helps children to organize what clothes or toys, activities, traits, and roles that are appropriate for each sex. Within their first year, an infant distinguishes between male and female faces and voices. By age 2, children use schemas of gender to organize their understandings. So our influence on gender in our children's lives begin very, very early. So as children mature through adolescence, they continue to seek role models for masculinity and femininity. Now, the third group of theories that we'll touch on are cultural theories of gender. Cultural theories examine the larger influences of culture on the development of identity. Cultural theories represent a fairly comprehensive approach to gender development as they incorporate other theories within the broader context of society at a particular moment in time. And the first one we're going to look at is anthropology. Anthropological theories examine how various cultures construct and express gender. Many societies have conceptions of gender that are really quite different from North America. We are not the hallmark of gender. For example, Australian Aboriginal fathers have no say in their daughter's marriage, as it's entirely a woman's activity. In Germany, New Zealand, Nepal, and Australia, legally, they recognize more than 2 genders. There are some with 3, some with 5. In the Dominican Republic, some males are born with underdeveloped sex organs, and it's not that uncommon. They are raised as conditional girls, and they dress and are treated like girls. But during puberty, when there's a flush of hormones that promote sexual maturity, in those boys, their testes drop, their penises grow, and they are accepted now as a boy, and it's all okay and accepted. It's not like you're stigmatized. The second group under culture is what we're going to look at as symbolic interactionism. Now, it's a larger theoretical group, but it's a group that focuses on the face-to-face dynamics. It doesn't look at big picture items. It looks at the micro. And so their emphasis is on the process by which individuals learn to participate in society and internalize its values through communicating with others. So it's that communication with people through that communication that we learn about gender. It's through communication with others we learn who we are, including our gender identity. As parents interact with children, they tell them who they are. Each label offers the child awareness of their self-image. Children internalize views to arrive at understanding. Play with peers and teachers, interactions with other students are key ways cultural views of gender are communicated to children. In addition, roles are important for understanding cultural theories of gender. A role is a set of expectations and behaviors, values associated with them. Roles are external to the individual, and they are assigned by society. One example is you are a student. That's a role you play. It comes with some expectations. Attend classes, study, make notes, take tests, hand in assignments, and that's what society expects of the role of student. So another example would be gender roles assume that women are caregivers or represent in the service and clerical jobs, whereas men are found to be in executive positions far more often. Women are asked to take care of social activities, where men are regarded as breadwinners. The current recession has been challenging traditional roles. More men are being laid off, more women are finding work. Now, the last grouping of theories is, as I mentioned, is the critical theories, and it's a little bit different in that it's different from the other theories in that critical theory directs attention to the structures and practices by which society classifies people. They're interested in how the dominant group of privilege, It's interested in how dominant groups privilege their own interests and impose the less privilege on the less powerful. So understanding how oppressed groups can become empowered is what is of interest here. So they have a more political edge, if you will. So the first one we'll look at is what's known as standpoint theory. And it notes that societies are made up of different groups that have varied amounts of power and privilege. It focuses on how membership is different, how membership in different groups shapes what individuals experience. So gender, race, class, sexual identity are all things that if you're, let's simplify it. Let's say you're in a low-income family. What you experience in your society, your community, and your group is going to be different. Your view of society will be different than somebody who lives in a higher income environment. Their experience will be different. They don't struggle to get things. And so all that makes a difference. So this theory, it has three major claims. All points of view about social life are partial. And that's kind of what I was saying, that if you live in a low income, you don't know what it is to live in a high income. You think you do, but you've never lived there, so you don't know. And the same is true for someone in a high income. They think they know what someone in a low income needs to do to make things better, but they don't know. So everybody's social view is partial. Secondly, some perspectives are more limited than others. That makes sense. Standpoint is earned by developing a political awareness of the power differences among the social groups. Society is made of different groups, and they are organized in social hierarchy. Membership in groups shapes what an individual experiences. So where are you on this hierarchy will shape what you understand. Marginalized people can generate a unique insight on how a society works by offering perspectives outside the cultural center. So if people speak up and make themselves known, then maybe that makes an influence, and there's that political component. Some theorists assert that for survival, those in subordinate positions must understand their own positions as well as those of individuals with more power. We all occupy multiple social locations and can earn or develop multiple standpoints that overlap and interact. Standpoint theory helps us to understand gender by pointing out how membership in different groups shapes individuals' experiences, personality, and identities and abilities. Now, the next group of critical theories is a combo group, queer performative theory. And we'll look at these in separates, but I would like you to just touch on the three examples that are in your textbook there to sort of look under that theory. This class of theories looks at people who defy conventional identity categories of sex, gender, and sexual identity. They suggest that it troubles our thinking, and that trouble is productive. So the more we get introduced to new things that make us struggle with what we're trying to understand, the more that is viewed as productive. First, we'll look at the queer theory. Queer theory challenges the way a culture defines and polices what is considered normal and abnormal in relation to sexuality. Queer theory is a critique of conventional categories of identity and cultural views of normal and abnormal. And they've coined a term, and you can check it out in your text, heteronormativity. The word queer doesn't refer only to gays and lesbians, but it refers to anything that departs from what is society considers normal. And it challenges what is considered normal and abnormal. Not useful to use terms like women, men, gay, straight. Identities are shaped by numerous factors, not by a single factor. That's misleading. Assumes identities are not fixed, but relatively fluid. They change over time. Who I thought I was at 16 is not who I was at 25, and not who I was at 45, and not who I am now at 65. Means more than being able to switch from one sex or gender to another. Can mean refusing to accept any stable identity. Now, the second part of the queer performative theory is performative theory. It's through performance and expressions that humans generate their identity, including gender. It's without performance, there is no gender. Performance is what is being used here as to describe when you're out of your home and you're out among other people, what you're doing is performing. Gender comes into being only as expressed. Gender is something that we do at specific times. Gender is a verb, not a noun. We express conventional gender through everyday practices. We resist conventional views of gender if we act in ways that are inconsistent with assigned roles. So if I were to start wearing a kilt or a dress, maybe more specifically, that would start to challenge the conventional view of me and my gender. Performances are collaborative. We are not working in a vacuum here, folks, but we are among others and we receive feedback constantly. Queer performative theories integrate views of queer and performative theories where performances are means of challenging and destabilizing cultural categories and their attached values. Important are performances that are routine or everyday and serve as political tools that unsettle. So theories, they often work together. We wear these different sunglasses to understand issues, and they shed light on how we develop and enact our gender identities. I hope this has been helpful for you. That's been Chapter 2, looking at theoretical development of gender. We'll move into the rhetorical development. Rhetorical is really just a powerful argument, or an argument for something. And we'll look at images of men, and then the following week we'll look at images of women. All right, everybody, good luck. We'll see you next week. Bye now.